Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to look at kind of more advanced lighting strategies. And I'm going to jump over the interior portion right now. I could come in and put some rectangular lights, or if I really wanted to be precise, I could actually go in and see where the lighting of the pavilion actually is. Model little lamps and put lights in and use them to illuminate the interior. But I want to work on bigger aspects right now. And the one I want to tackle is HDR Eyes, which are dynamic high-range images. So images that carry not only just kind of a background color, say white clouds and a blue sky, but also carry information about lighting. And Vray for Rhino can use these images to illuminate the scene. And for that matter, we don't even need a sun anymore. So we can delete that. One thing I'm going to do is that I looked online and looked at some more pictures, and this piece of glass and this piece of glass are actually kind of milky white. So I'm going to open up my materials panel. I'm going to copy my glass by duplicating it, and I'll have glass 1. I'm going to rename this to frosted glass, and then I'm going to come down and I'm going to change my transparency and make it a little gray. Let's see if I get something. It's gray glass now, and I actually want it to be white. So that seems better. So with those two panes of glass selected, I'm going to apply this new material to it, and then we can move outside. So as we're getting closer and closer to kind of a final product or something that's really starting to be polished, it's important to start thinking about what specific view you're rendering. We may move the HDRI around. We may decide that we want an early morning sun or lots of clouds based on the position of kind of the scene. So I'm zooming around here trying to find kind of a shot that I want to render out in full. One thing I always do is end up playing with the lens length here, and maybe I want to drop this down to 24 millimeters and get a little bit of the side pavilion here. So maybe something like this, pretty happy with. I think that's a nice composition for the scene. Alright, so I'm going to save this by setting it as a new name view, and we'll just save it as 2. And so with that done, I'm going to open up my V-Ray options. Earlier, in one of the very first tutorials, I talked about the environment here, and the standard is just to have this white reflection background and this GI skylight. But just like anything else, we have an ability to place maps in, and doing so will allow us to have a better control and maybe more realistic kind of lighting of the scene. So again, I'm going to say it's a bitmap. And I've downloaded a series. A lot of these are for sale online, and finding a few that are usable for you might be worth your investment. If not, there are a few free options, and there is also just Google image searching and seeing if you can come up with something that will work for you. I'm going to go ahead and use this number 41 and bring it in. And you can see right now it's just a sphere. There's the ground and the swirls of the sky. One thing I have to do is tell it that it's not just a generic an environment, a generic material, but it is an environment. And that the way this was made, there's several ways to make them, but I'm going to use mirror ball, which is essentially someone taking a picture of a mirror, a mirrored sphere, and that shows kind of the back and forth. And when I do that, you can see it flattens out, and it's going to be an enveloping kind of environment for the rendering. The other thing I'm going to do is make sure that I am selected on gamma corrected, and for whatever reason, if I up my gamma to 2.2, this is just kind of a standard, the image becomes a little bit brighter, and it just illuminates the scene better. So I'm going to say OK. I'm going to do that exact same thing for the reflection refraction layer and for this reflection map. So click maps, say bitmap, pick the same number 41. Put my gamma at 2.2. Tell it it is an environment and that it's from a mirror ball. And the third time I'm going to turn this one on. Same deal. Bitmap 41, gamma 2.2, environment, mirror ball. So with those changes, I know that I've also removed the sun. This is going to be what illuminates the scene. Let's see, if I go to a rendered view right now, see we can't see the HDRI, but it is there. I'm going to close environment and go to camera. And remember, with the sun, I had that bright light and I had to do 450 shutter speed. With an HDRI, we're going to get a much softer, simpler light. Some people would even say that even turning off this kind of exposure control entirely will work well, but I like to have the kind of fine-tune ability to make it a little brighter or a little darker. But I'm going to drop this down to, say, 1/20. And with that, I'm just going to do a quick test render and see what we get. Alright, so that one completed really quickly. I'm on a fairly low setting, but that's good just for production and especially for making video tutorials. We don't need to go too high in depth. But a couple things to point out. One, the sky here illuminated the scene brilliantly. We have nice soft shadows like we'd expect. It's pretty well in focus, or not focus, but exposure, except for the background here. It's awfully bright. Additionally, if you look here, this is the HDRI we see through this little portal, this hole here, and you can see the kind of the blurred earth and then the sky. So this is a good opportunity to come in and look at additional channels. You see here we're on the RGB color value, but there's also an alpha, and you can see that the sky in the background, well, they don't count. There's nothing actually there. So I'd be able to save this file out as a JPEG or a TIFF, and I could also switch and save this file out. And what this would allow me to do in Photoshop is to use this black as a mask and then change the contrast of the sky to add a little more contrast to it so that I could see the clouds in the outline. If I didn't want to do that, I'd have to come back in and mess with my shutter speed. And this is where it's going to get tricky. Say I want the sky to be in focus, I can drop this to 50 or up it to 50, and then when I render, we'll see the actual scene itself will likely be considerably darker, although we may be able to finally start to see the sky, as you can right there. So as it renders through, it's finishing up just now. There, you can see, well, yeah, I can see the sky, but my scene is not really what I wanted. It doesn't have kind of the brightness and the exposure that would make for a good image. So that's where we can come back in here and say that we want to add a VFB channel. And for that we can say, well, maybe we can pick Z depth, which I'll show. How do we add this? I think we just click it, yeah, easily. So we click the ones we want. So there's Z depth and background. And then I'm going to come back up, close this, go to environment, camera, and set the shutter speed back down to 20. So if I render again, I'm going to have that same image, except I'm going to show you I have kind of new layers that I can use for an export and post-processing in Photoshop. Let's see if this is, yeah, it's rendering out. So again, I have my alpha layer just like before, and I can watch these render live. But I also put on Z depth, and as you can see here, I have kind of a white foreground and a black background. That'll help me use a lens blur in Photoshop, where I can actually kind of fake a depth of field to the shot. Lastly, I have the background. If I go to my alpha, you can see how bright it is. But if I have my background here, I could export this and then use different levels of opacity to kind of pull together the entire image. So I also want to take one last look at another thing before we move on to that kind of stuff. And I set it up so that the glass should be fairly reflective. Actually, and I want to see the white glass I put in. So I'm going to come around to this side, and I'm going to change one setting. And the environment, I said that I wanted a reflection map, and I'm going to really crank it up. I'm going to go to 3.0 and hope that in all of this glass we have reflections of the clouds in the sky around. So let's do a render here. Alright, so there's the final render here, and we can definitely see there's a lot of reflection of the sky and kind of these portions. Because the roof and the floor extend so far beyond, you can see them here. We don't get to see too much of it, but it's definitely working, so I'm happy with that. So the last thing I'm going to do in this tutorial is to add a couple interior lights, set up a really nice view, and render something at a really high resolution. Then I'll show you what we can do in taking it into Photoshop and working to kind of bring out the sky, bring out the backgrounds, work with contrast, and highlight different aspects of it. So to get the lights in, I'm just going to go into Plan View. Right, so in Plan, I'm just going to put in a couple rectilinear lights, and the rectangular light looks like this. And for some reason it's now in 2 spots, but that's fine. We'll work with it. And I know that these are frosted, and my view will likely not show much of that, so I'm going to drop one light here, and then I'm going to do another one back here. Now with both of these lights selected, I can come back and adjust the heights of them. You can see right now they're on the base plane. One's facing up and one's facing down, and that's fine because we can fix that. So I'm going to pull these guys up, and while I have them both selected, I can edit the light properties. And one important thing to do here is make them invisible. I'm not interested in seeing big white planes floating in my rendering. I just want the light. And lastly, here, this one's kind of upside down. So by clicking it and typing the command flip, I can turn its direction. I'm going to select the other one, and I'm going to move them as far up as I can. So then I'm going to come back to my view, maybe pull out right there. In rendered view, again, I'm not getting the light on this wall because I have lights on the inside and I don't have a sunlight, but I do have the HDRI. So let's give it a test render, and then we'll be able to make tweaks to see if there's more that we need to do. Alright, so I can already tell the interior is way too overexposed. I think both those lights have a default value of 30. I can lower or raise the intensity from there, and with 2 lights on the inside, it only makes sense to drop them down. So I'm going to drop them maybe to 10 and give it another shot. To do that, I'm going to type SEL light. It's going to select both those 2 rectangular lights, and I'm going to drop them down to 10 and hit render again. Alright, so as this is kind of coming along, I still see my lights are too bright. So I have an idea that I might be able to change from a rectangular light to just a spotlight or a point light, make that. The second thing is although this is a nice macro view, I'm not getting much of the interior detail. So I'm going to try to update my settings of where my camera is to get something that has both the background and detail of the inside, because we spent a lot of time modeling and adding texture, and here we don't see any of that. So the first thing is the SEL light. I'm going SEL light. I'm going to delete. Apparently I'm not going to get them. There we go. Delete both of those lights. I'm going to move in, and now we come up with the problem this. I never applied a texture there, so I'm going to do that. Just put on the travertine stone and tell it to map using a plane, bounding box, world. We've done this a million times, and I'm going to have it match. But then we have to switch, and this is going to be 400. Uh-oh. 20. So play with the settings so you can see that it's not quite working right. What do I want this to be? So bigger seems to be better. But it's not quite what I need it to be. Let's see if I can match it to something else. I'm going to match it here. There we go. That's what I want. And the seams line up. Perfect. I just matched it to the same wall we matched everything with. Alright, so I'm going to come in. Let's see, and this thing is going to have the same problem there. But I'm not going to see that one, so I'm okay with that. So there I see the sky, some of the details, definitely the stone. I can zoom in a little bit. There. I really like that view. So I'm going to give this one a... so I'm going to save this view. Let's do that, and then put in the lights. So save this view as 3. And then, let's see, I want a point light. So by clicking here, I can put the point light here. I have to go back into non-rendered view. And by holding control, I can just drag the point light up. I can also drop it down to, say, maybe 6. I wonder if there's, I want to make sure there's a way I can tell it to be invisible. Maybe I can't do it with the point light. There. So now I'm going to just slide it along this line into the scene. And then let's see what the render shows. That might work, so I'm going to give it a test render. Alright, as it's finishing off the statue, I know that I've got the lighting levels at least where I want them. With all my different layers here, I can play with the Z-depth and the lens blur, and I'm able to save that background. The one thing is I'm not thrilled with maybe the composition. I wish I could see a little bit more of the entry. This feels like, you know, kind of just a strange angle to take a shot of. You don't see anything too much in detail. So I'll play around with this a little bit longer, and then I'm going to do a really high resolution rendering at a higher setting. So I'll still keep the HDRI stuff, which I'll probably have to set up again, but I'm going to also drop this to, say, a 35mm lens, which is going to bring me in a little closer. If only that statue was in a different spot. That's what I like so much about this. Let's see if we can come around this side. I'm just going to do a test by right-clicking. That's not going to work. Alright, so we'll go out the door, and the statue just won't be there. Alright, so that's going to be my view. It's really low perspective, try to get a lot of the roof, kind of see how everything falls apart, and then not falls apart, but is separated on the far end here. We'll see this nice green wall, the red wall. Won't see the statue, but that'll be for a different view. So with that, I'm going to let this render, and then we'll take it into Photoshop and have some final thoughts in the last tutorial. Alright, so there it is, the final rendering. This one took a little bit to complete. There's still some issues with it though. I see the reflectivity on this metal in these 3 locations is just way too much, especially here on the large one. And instead of re-rendering everything and letting it run again, I'm going to try to take it into Photoshop and see what I can do to just kind of correct these lines, because they're not organic. They're very straight, you know, kind of, I can use polygonal lasso tool in Photoshop and hopefully blend from this color gray to this color gray and just kind of mask over that in these few locations. So what I'm going to do is save out all of these, and I'll just save to my desktop. I'll create a new folder called Barcelona Pavilion renders, and I'm going to save them as TIFFs. So this is the RGB. We're going to go to the alpha. The Z depth, and the background. And in the last tutorial, we'll combine them all and do a little Photoshop work to make this thing, the way we want it.